Relationship anxiety, you love them, you're completely sure of that. But your brain won't let you rest. There's always a question underneath everything. Is this real? Are they happy? Is something wrong that I can't see? It's exhausting. Not because the relationship is bad, but because your brain is running a threat detection program on the one person you love most. This is relationship anxiety, and it has nothing to do with how much you love someone. Let's start with what it actually is. Relationship anxiety is not insecurity. It's not immaturity. It's not a sign that you've chosen the wrong person. It's an anxious attachment pattern, a way the nervous system learned to relate to closeness based on what closeness looked like early in life. The brain learned people who love you might also leave. People who are close might also become distant. And so it built a system. Stay alert. Watch for signs. Don't get too comfortable. Because comfort is where you get caught off guard. That system made sense once. In the environment where it was built, it was genuinely useful. The problem is the brain kept running it, long after the original environment was gone, into every relationship that followed. Now let's talk about what it actually feels like. From the inside, it feels like love, but with an undercurrent, like you're watching the relationship from slightly outside it, always waiting for something to go wrong. It feels like checking, constantly, without being able to stop. It feels like one word, sent without an emoji, can ruin your entire afternoon. It feels like there's silence, a normal pause in conversation, registers in your chest as something close to abandonment. It feels like you're always bracing, like you've never fully relaxed into the relationship, because fully relaxing feels like lowering your guard. And the cruel irony is, the relationship might be genuinely good. Your partner might be consistent, loving, present, and none of that fully lands. Because the anxiety isn't responding to the relationship, it's responding to the story the brain wrote before this relationship even existed. Now, the reassurance loop. This is one of the most important things to understand about relationship anxiety. Anxiety spikes. You feel the fear. Are they still in this? Do they still love me? So you reach out, you text, you ask, you find a way to check in and get a reading, and they respond. Of course they do. Yes, I love you. We're completely fine. And you feel it. Real, genuine relief. The spike drops, the shoulders come down, and then, sometimes within minutes, the doubt comes back. What if they only said that because they didn't want to upset me? What if they meant it then, but not now? What if I'm reading it wrong? And the loop begins again. Each cycle, the reassurance works for a shorter time than the last. The problem isn't the partner's answer. The problem is that reassurance treats the symptom, not the cause. The anxiety doesn't need an answer. It needs a different relationship with uncertainty. Let's talk about the fear of abandonment, the engine underneath all of it. Most people with relationship anxiety carry a core belief, often completely unconscious, that goes something like this. The people I love will eventually leave. Not because the current partner has done anything to deserve that suspicion, but because someone, somewhere early on, taught the nervous system that this is how love ends. And so the brain, doing its job, keeps one eye on the exit. Not because it wants the relationship to end, but because it wants to see it coming. Some people spend more time mentally preparing for the end of the relationship than actually being in it. The brain calls this preparation. It's actually a form of self-protection, pre-grieving a loss so that if it arrives, you won't be destroyed by it. What it costs is the present, the actual relationship happening right now. Now, reading into everything. This is where the anxious brain becomes genuinely creative, and not in a good way. A text message that says okay becomes a case study. Was there a period? Was there not? Why only 2 letters when yesterday there were 12? They take 4 minutes to reply instead of 2. The brain files that as evidence, as a data point, as something that fits a pattern that doesn't actually exist. The anxious brain is an expert at finding danger in neutral information. It's not stupid. It's over-calibrated. It was built for an environment where the small signals mattered enormously, where a shift in a parent's mood meant the emotional weather was about to change. Now that skill has transferred. The small signals still get read, but with the same weight they carried when something important actually depended on them. Let's talk about what relationship anxiety does to your sense of self. Because it doesn't just affect how you feel about the relationship. It affects how you feel about yourself inside it. Am I too much? This thought lives in the background of almost every person with relationship anxiety. Did I text too many times today? Was I too honest about what I was feeling? Did I need too much? And did they notice? Is my love the way I love a burden? And so some people manage this by becoming smaller, by editing themselves, by presenting a version that seems easier to keep. The irony is that this editing, this shrinking, creates the distance they were trying to prevent. You can't be truly known when you're performing a manageable version of yourself. Let's talk about what this does to the partner. Because relationship anxiety doesn't happen in a vacuum. Partners of anxious people often feel like nothing they do lands. They give reassurance and watch it dissolve. They show love and watch it evaporate. They show up consistently and still feel like they're failing. They might start to wonder, is it me? Am I not expressive enough? Not reassuring enough? Not enough in some way I don't understand? Relationship anxiety, left unnamed, quietly exhausts even the most loving, patient partners. Not because they don't care, but because love isn't the thing the anxiety needs. Understanding is. Now the self-sabotage spiral. This is what happens when the anxiety is driving and nobody knows its name. The anxiety fears that the partner will pull away, so it seeks closeness, more contact, more reassurance, more connection. The partner, being human, needs natural breathing room. A moment alone, a quiet evening, normal space. The anxious brain reads that space as withdrawal, as distance, as the beginning of the end. So the anxiety pushes harder for closeness. The partner, sensing the intensity, naturally creates a little more space, and the anxious brain reads that as confirmation of its worst fear and pushes even harder. The very thing you were afraid of, the anxiety begins to create. This is why naming it, identifying what's actually happening, is so important. Let's talk about the science for a moment. What's actually happening in the brain during a relationship anxiety episode? The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, fires. It detects something it interprets as social threat. The prefrontal cortex, the rational, reasoning part, gets partially taken offline. The thinking brain tries to evaluate the situation, but the alarm is louder. The hippocampus pulls old memories, old feelings of abandonment, rejection, uncertainty, and offers them as relevant context. So in the space of a few seconds, your nervous system has declared a social emergency, based partly on a present trigger and largely on a past that isn't happening anymore. This is not a character flaw. This is neuroscience. Now let's talk about what actually helps. Not quick fixes. Not reassurance. What actually changes the pattern at the root? The first thing, naming it. Specifically, when the anxiety fires, instead of being swept inside it, naming it from the outside. That thought, they're pulling away, that's my anxiety, not evidence. The thought hasn't changed, but you're no longer inside it. That gap between the thought and the response is where everything changes. The second thing, tolerating uncertainty without resolving it. The anxious brain wants a definitive answer. It wants certainty, but no relationship provides certainty, and chasing it only exhausts both people. The practice is sitting with the discomfort of not knowing, and not acting on it. Every time you do this, the wave gets smaller. The third thing, communication. Not performing calm you don't feel. Actual communication. When a partner understands what's actually happening, they stop trying to fix something that isn't broken. They become an ally rather than an unwitting participant. There's a difference between, do you still love me, which feeds the loop, and I'm having an anxious moment, I don't need you to fix it, I just wanted you to know. One asks the other person to regulate your nervous system. The other regulates it yourself and shares the truth. The fourth thing, building internal security. Anxious attachment creates a dynamic where the partner becomes the entire source of emotional safety. When they are warm, you are okay. When they are quiet, you are in crisis. The relationship has become the regulator. The work, and it is work, is building a self that can hold its own emotional weight, not to need the relationship less, but to need it differently. The fifth thing, working with a therapist who understands attachment, because the pattern was built in relationship, and it's most effectively changed in relationship. Approaches like emotionally focused therapy, EFT, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, have strong evidence for changing anxious attachment patterns over time. Not because something is fundamentally wrong with you, but because the brain is plastic. It learns, and it can unlearn, and it can learn something better. Let's talk about what healthy attachment actually looks like. Because sometimes the pattern runs so long, people forget what they're working toward. In secure attachment, a partner's silence is just silence. A quiet evening is just a quiet evening. A moment of distance is a moment, not a verdict. In secure attachment, you can miss someone without it becoming an emergency. In secure attachment, conflict is a conversation, not a threat to the relationship's existence. This is what you're working toward, not the absence of anxiety, but anxiety that no longer runs the relationship. Let's talk about some specific situations and what's actually happening in each one. Situation 1. Your partner is quieter than usual. Nothing has happened. They just seem a bit distant. What the anxious brain does, interprets the quiet as withdrawal, scans for evidence, creates a narrative. They're pulling away, and begins to feel the feelings associated with that narrative as if it's already confirmed. What to do instead? Notice the interpretation. Ask, is this a fact, or is this the story I'm adding? Let a beat pass before acting on it. Situation 2. After an argument, the fight is resolved, or so your partner thinks. But for the anxious person, the argument doesn't end when the conversation ends. The anxious person is still running it. Every word examined. Did I say the right thing? Did they fully forgive me? Is there a residue? This is called post-argument anxiety, and it keeps the nervous system in a state of unresolved threat long after the actual threat has passed. Situation 3. The partner wants an evening alone, time to recharge, nothing personal, just introvert math. The anxious brain. This is the beginning of them pulling away. They don't want to spend time with me. They're tired of me. I'm too much. What's actually true? They are an autonomous person who loves you and also needs time to themselves. Both things are completely compatible. Let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough: the grief inside relationship anxiety. The person with relationship anxiety often has an unconscious grief for the secure attachment they never had, for the early experience of love that felt safe enough to rest in. And sometimes what feels like anxiety about the current relationship is actually grief about a much earlier one. There is something that requires being said directly. Having relationship anxiety does not make you a bad partner. It makes you a person with a pattern that needs attention. The most loving, devoted, thoughtful people can carry relationship anxiety because it was never about the quality of the love, it was always about the safety of the nervous system. Let's come to the close. What I want you to take from this, whether you're the person with the anxiety or the person who loves them, if this is you, the anxiety is not proof that something is wrong with the relationship. It's a signal that something needs attention inside the pattern. You are not too much. You are a person whose nervous system learned to love loudly because quiet love wasn't always safe enough to trust. The pattern can change, not because you force it, but because you see it, name it, and choose differently. One moment at a time. If you love someone with relationship anxiety, the most important thing you can do is understand the pattern, not fix it, not absorb it, understand it. When you understand what you're looking at, when you don't trust me becomes their nervous system is activated, the dynamic changes completely. Your patience isn't infinite, and it doesn't need to be, but your understanding can be a lifeline for both of you. The relationship worth having, on the other side of this work, is one where both people are present, not performing certainty they don't feel, not waiting for the other shoe to drop, not managing someone else's emotions or shrinking themselves to be easier. Just two people who know each other, actually know each other, and have chosen to keep showing up. Relationship anxiety is loud. It's convincing. It speaks in the voice of certainty about things it can't possibly know. It will tell you that the relationship is one wrong move from ending, that you are too much or not enough, that this good thing you have is temporary, and you will feel the pull to believe it, because it has been so convincing for so long. And in that moment, the moment you feel the pull, you have a choice. Not to eliminate the anxiety, just to not let it drive. That's not a small thing. That's everything. Relationship anxiety doesn't mean you love wrong. It means you learned to love in a world where love felt uncertain. The anxiety makes sense. The hypervigilance made sense. The reassurance seeking made sense. Given what the nervous system learned, every single part of this makes sense. And so does the work of changing it. Not because you owe it to anyone, not to become easier to love, but because you deserve to be in the room with someone you love, without being at war with your own brain. The love was never the problem. It never is. Before you go, I want to ask you something. How did you feel watching this? Did any part of it sound like your own story? Drop it in the comments below. No judgment. Just people who understand. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone you love, a like goes a long way. It helps more people find this. And if you want to understand more about how your brain works, subscribe. Every week we break down one thing about the human mind that most people feel, but nobody explains. You won't regret it. Everything covered in this video is rooted in real science. If you want to go deeper, the research on anxious attachment comes from John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth's foundational attachment theory. For the brain science, look into the work of Sue Johnson on emotionally focused therapy. And for practical tools, the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller is the clearest starting point. Links are in the description.